Could see the ledger the government was creating. The good guys at the FBI were fighting to solve a massacre, while the bad guys at Apple obstinately stood in their way. The government had framed the case to create a public relations contest as much as a courtroom challenge. Apple's position on security hung in the balance. If Apple created the software the government demanded, Cook feared, it could be used on any iPhone in the world. As people stored photos, health information, and financial data on their iPhones, they needed to be able to trust that the information was protected. Creating a system to unlock the San Bernardino device would shatter people's confidence in their iPhones. It threatened the magic of the device that Cook depended on for the majority of Apple's sales. Not to mention that it would weaken Cook's recent letter to customers, hyping the iPhone as more private and secure than Google's competing Android operating system, which tracked people online. Our business model is very straightforward. We sell great products, he wrote. We don't build a profile based on your email content or web browsing habits to sell to advertisers. Cook assembled company leaders, Finance Chief Luca Maestri, Marketing Chief Phil Schiller, Software Chief Craig Federighi, and Head of Communications Steve Dowling, in the boardroom to figure out how to fend off the government's attack. It was late afternoon, and he wanted a response that would reach all of Apple's customers by sunrise. Caving into the government was not an option. Cook had decided long before the San Bernardino shooting that he would fight a court order. As Apple had increased iPhone security, he had discussed hypothetical scenarios with its legal team about what Apple should do if someone was kidnapped, and law enforcement said that the only way to rescue the victim was by accessing the kidnapper's iPhone. Cook had scrutinized every angle of the scenario, asking, "Did you think about this?" Ultimately, he had decided that protecting all Apple customers by refusing to create a backdoor outweighed solving a single crime. The fight. Sensing energy, he tried to slow everyone down with methodical questions. He suggested, unemotionally, that they start at the beginning. "What do we know about the phone?" he asked. The phone and with the prediction the government meeting something takes weeks. It could extend requests for law enforcement seeking criminals' phones. As the software spread, increased that it might fall into the hack or authoritative. The group agreed that Cook would write a letter explaining his position for the company's website. Employees, customers, media, and lawmakers would host confrontation. Cook spent an hour discussing what the letter should say as Dowling took notes. Together with the Justice Department effort to the killer's privacy, sympathies with the victims and families. He also resistance to, and it was taken to protect all customers, not just the San Bernardino killers. He needed to take an emotional charge. Dowling drafted the first version of the letter for Cook to review. The CEO suggested changes and handed it back to Dowling for revision. They reviewed half the time as they tone and adjusted individual words. And Noreen Crawl, Apple's chief litigation counsel, drafted a response with a they wanted to say the back copy Rather, the device a day's power, ability to fund companies like Apple. Yeah. Cook's line. Aware that they were taking an unpopular to hurt Apple. In the days that followed, Apple's showdown with the FBI dominated the news, accounting for about 500 articles a day and constant discussion on TV. It became a campaign as Republican candidate Donald Trump blasted Apple and called for a boycott of its products. Public opinion was split, with half the country demanding that Apple cooperate with the FBI and half supporting its resistance. The battle between the world's largest company and the world's most powerful government was in February 25th, a week after the letter. A crew from ABC News arrived at Infinite Loop with World News Tonight anchor David Muir. The group was greeted by an Apple communications official and ushered across the skylit atrium toward the company's fourth-floor executive wing. Dowling had invited the ABC team to Cupertino with the hope that they would tilt opinion in the company's favor. He had known Muir's producer for years and trusted the dark-haired 42-year-old anchor to relay Apple's perspective to the world. After all, it was Daddy's network, part of the vast Disney empire overseen by Apple board member Bob Iger. The group walked through the executive wing to Cook's office, where Muir found a tired and somber CEO. Cook knew that the interview might be his best shot at persuading the country that what Apple was doing was not crazy. The location where they met spoke to the gravity of the moment. The deeply private Cook had agreed to do the interview in his office, as the communications team tried to humanize a man who often appeared robotic. As he perched on a stool opposite Muir, the camera provided a glimpse of the CEO's everyday workplace. There was a tidy desk topped by manila folders and a silver iPad. The wall behind it featured color photographs from Apple's retail stores, not far from a framed copy of an Auburn alumni magazine. Collectively, they told the story of his devotions, Apple and Auburn. Cook clasped his hands in his lap, his blue eyes puffy from too little sleep, and gazed at Muir. He stiffened atop a stool, wooden and focused. "I don't think we've ever done an interview in your office before," Muir said. "I'm not sure I've ever done an interview in the office," Cook said, without a smile. Muir decided to dive right in. "As we sit here, some of the families of the victims in San Bernardino have now come out in support of the judge's order that Apple helped the FBI unlock that iPhone. One family reportedly saying, 'We're angry and confused as to why Apple is refusing to do this.' What would you say to those families tonight?" Cook listened intently. "David, they have our deepest sympathy," he said. "What they've been through, no one should have to go through." He paused and gazed downward. "Apple has cooperated with the FBI fully in this case," he continued. "They came to us and asked us for all the information we had on this phone, and we gave everything that we had. We went further than that and volunteered engineers to help them and gave new suggestions about how they might learn more about this particular case. But this case is not about one phone. This case is about the future. What is at stake here is, can the government compel Apple to write software we believe make hundreds of millions of customers vulnerable around the world?" The exclusive interview played that night on ABC to an audience of about 9 million viewers. ABC posted the entire 30-minute conversation on YouTube as well. Cook's appearance on Daddy's network was viewed inside Apple as a win in its public debate with the FBI, a moment when the CEO came off serious, sympathetic, fully in command of the issue, advanced advancing without debate a complex philosophical argument that he had summarized with a succinct analogy. The government's request for Apple to write code to make it easier to gain access to the phone was the software equivalent of a challenge. He had a call U.S. attorney too aggressive. Escalated its attack on Apple, arguing one of its company's refusal to comply with the order. Based model pointed out Cook had increased to cast protect technology peers and which data for advertising businesses. Pointed to this recent letter and battling the past, storing data on servers in that country where the government closely monitors its system. The reason that if privacy was, as Cook said, where the government could restrict the sale of international brands, had surrendered high ground to protect sales and had explained the compromise away by saying that Apple abided by the rules of the countries where it operated. He had also cut a series of deals with Google worth an estimated $10 billion annually to make it the default search engine of iPhones, allowing Apple to benefit financially from the very data collection practices that he publicly condemned. Plus, he allowed the company to encourage people to back up their iPhones to iCloud, for which Apple charged a monthly fee above a data threshold, and didn't overtly tell them that their sensitive information would be vulnerable to government subpoena. Sewell immediately called Cook, who was in Cupertino, and relayed the news. "You're not going to believe this, but we just got a 2-week stay," he said. Cook immediately began asking questions. He wanted to know everything Sewell could tell him. All Sewell could say was that the FBI had found a third party that would be able to break into the phone, and in doing so, it would undermine the government's argument that only Apple could access the device. Cook was silent as he processed the latest twist. He listened as Sewell explained that the judge would include in her order that Apple was not in violation of the court during the postponement. For now, Apple was no longer the bad guy. A few days later, the Justice Department dropped the case. The government had cracked the terrorist's iPhone without Apple's help by paying professional hackers more than $1 million to break into it. The FBI wasn't happy about the outcome. The agency, which didn't have the capability to break into the phone itself, wanted a more permanent resolution to the dispute over accessing iPhones in criminal investigations. It wanted to be able to force Apple to unlock phones by court order when need be, but it had lost that option by finding an alternative way of gaining entry. Cook and Sewell had been prepared to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, a process that would have prolonged the debate and lengthened the amount of time the FBI accused it of putting profits ahead of public safety. It would have been disastrous for the Apple brand. Though the core issue of the case was left unresolved, the damage it inflicted on Apple was limited. The resolution freed Cook to focus on a more pressing concern. During the month-long saga, sales of Apple's iPhone 6s, launched in September 2015, had soared, especially in China. Watch, to benefit from new fitness-focused marketing, wasn't contributing enough revenue to offset the fall in phone sales. For the first time in a decade, the reported a decline in sales. On April 26th, raised questions about results that worried. He broke down the deal in a 3-month period when Apple share price +% $46 billion. Its troubles, like tidewaters, rolled out to reveal a long-standing corporate vulnerability. Apple's future rested on a product from the past. The public expected the company to continue inventing products that were transformative and new, lest it risk entering a period of stagnation or worse, irrelevancy. For Cook, the pressure was unrelenting. Chapter 17. Hawaii Days. Johnny Ive arrived on the Fire Project, stuck in neutral. It was early 2016, and he quickly grew agitated at the lack of progress. The way of would be ready for the self-imposed deadline of 2019. Ive erupted. It was clear to everyone involved that the project was suffering under the weight of its ambitions. Ive's vision for a full autonomous vehicle had the build of a massive team of programmers and sensor experts, while hardware chief Dan Riccio's focus on creating an electric vehicle had led to the development of a massive team of battery and automotive experts. The project had 3 leaders who appeared more focused on building out their corporate fiefdom than on moving a unified project forward. The challenges were reminiscent of the corporate infighting that plagued the Apple Watch. Lavish spending compounded the woes. The project costs had ballooned to a staggering $1 billion a year. Project Titan leaders had hired autonomous vehicle researchers $10 million each and invested in the development of lasers to aim into passengers' eyes in a bid to reduce the motion sickness caused by a car's abrupt movements. Apple's R&D expenses mushroomed, nearly doubling to $8.1 billion by the end of 2015. It was loose change for a company with $200 billion million in cash, but the engineers viewed the warehouse as the latest example of a Silicon Valley giant spending big with nothing to show for it. In a fit of frustration, Ive pulled the entire design team off the project so they could return their focus to other work. He no longer considered the car worth their time. Apple's ambitious project would have to keep moving without its most vaunted division. Members of the Project Titan team shared his displeasure. The Special Project Group had swelled to a 1,000-person organization with a mutant culture that blended the grinding determination of Apple executives hell-bent on doing the impossible with the experienced skepticism of outsiders savvy about the challenges of self-driving vehicles. Old-timers and newcomers alike knew that Jobs had built the iPhone using a different approach. He had relied on a lean team of mostly existing employees in various divisions whom he had guided. But in Tim Cook's new collaborative kingdom, Apple's CEO no longer led development, and that void continued to challenge the company's efforts to innovate. The Ive Riccio blow-up was the culmination of growing frustration at a company unaccustomed to failure. In its wake, a February car demonstration to the board of directors was canceled. The future of the undertaking was in doubt. The race to Apple's next big thing slowed as its leaders dropped a caution flag. Without the thrill of a new endeavor, the distance between the artist and his longtime workplace widened. He turned his focus away from the familiar. His interest couldn't be fully contained by continual improvements in the curvature of future iPhones or reductions in the thickness of future laptops. His nourishment came from exploring new ideas and fulfilling unexpected curiosities. Without Jobs bringing order to Apple's creative process and clarity of thought to its ambitious projects, Ive found himself adrift. In 2016, as he looked elsewhere, it became no surprise that he turned his attention to Apple's involvement in Metropolitan Art's coming exhibit, Mono Ex Machina. Its focus on the intersection of technology and fashion satisfied his desire for discovery. His years working to imbue the Apple Watch with timeless style had roused an interest in learning more about the art of the couturier. On the first day of May, Ive exited the Carlyle Hotel on New York City's Upper East Side, headed to Fifth Avenue to trek north to the city's largest art museum for a private tour of Andrew Bolton's new exhibit. The show marked a moment of arrival for Ive and Apple. Nearly 2 years after showing Anna Wintour the watch at Carlyle for the first time, he was returning to the city not as an outsider from the land of technology, but as an accepted contributor to the world of fashion. Bolton greeted him inside the limestone-walled museum and led him into its Robert Lehman wing, a triangle-shaped extension that jutted into Central Park. The skylit gallery typically displayed 300 paintings. In recent scrims erected I followed Bolton through the white corridors, where a series of church-like alcoves displayed a collection of ensembles that pushed the boundaries of fashion and found hundreds of expressive clothes. The exhibition ranged from a traditional-looking cream suit with navy trim designed by Gabrielle Coco Chanel to a cascading evening dress made of pink bird-of-paradise feathers designed by Yves Saint Laurent. Floating above it all was the heavenly sound of layered keyboards and soaring synthesizers from British musician Brian Eno's song "An Ending Ascent." The tour culminated at the centerpiece of the exhibition, a circular room with a domed ceiling where Karl Lagerfeld's Chanel wedding dress was on display. Its scuba suit body flowed into a 20-foot-long train topped by a gold foliate pattern and hand-stitched gems. Bolton explained that the train had required 450 hours of workmanship. It's haute couture without the couture. Indeed, the dress was custom made, as couture should be.